hired by the companies that are then looking for a workforce that they are then going to be able to place where it is that the kids who have the highest scores of math, verbal, and science at the 4th, 8th, and 10th grades are going to get hired. So we see that as a little business plan. And when it comes to research and building a strong base for America's high-tech economy, I am concerned about three things. Number one is that we're starving America's innovation engine of funding through sequestration and mindless budget cuts. We can't have an honest conversation about research without acknowledging that elephant in the room, sequestration. A high-tech economy like ours needs research investments to keep the innovation pipeline stocked, period. We need to stop playing budget games which undermine our nation's long-term economic competitiveness, and that is the subject of our hearing today. Massachusetts is 2% of America's population. We have a business plan. You are the business plan. America is 4% of the world's population. That has to be our business plan. We can't compete with these other countries in these other areas. If we don't have a business plan that involves what you're talking about here today, then we're going to lose because the other countries are coming. You don't have to fear China, but you should respect them. They have a plan. The others have plans. We need a plan, and you have to understand the plan. Secondly, we must continue to support high-risk, high-reward discovery. We must support science for the sake of science, even if there's not necessarily a specific commercial application in sight. DARPANET was not intended to create Google, eBay, Amazon, Hulu, and YouTube, but it did. Cracking the human genome was not intended to create companies all over America, but it did. There were other purposes that originally were just rooted in basic science and technology. But you get the payoff if your country is the one that is making the investment. And thirdly, we need to look at public-private partnership models to help get innovation out of the lab and into the factory. We have some deeply entrenched industries that do not invest in innovation. That's the paradox of them. Okay? They might be the world's leaders, but then they don't even invest in innovation in the future because they're happy with their monopoly, what they think is their monopoly, until some young kid, comes up with the idea. But we have to create the conditions whereby that kid is getting the education they need and access to the technologies they need to crack the monopoly, because we have to keep our lead competitively over the rest of the world, over their kids who are going to be thirsting to make these changes that are going to be made. You just can't hold on to a technological lead. You just have to keep moving. We have some basic history on this. We know it's all part of ensuring that there is an adaptation to new business models, but you have to keep keeping the pressure on. In those sectors, we need to look at ways of partnering with our innovators on proof of concept and demonstration projects so that more breakthroughs can bridge the valley of death and reach the market. And I know that's something that the chairman is interested in, that Mr. Thune is interested in, and I think we should be able to do something, that reflects that in the legislation that we are considering. I actually have a bill that I plan to introduce soon that would address the issue that leads to kind of solving this valley of death problem. And I think we have to do it if we're going to be successful, and I'd like to work with you on that. Dr. Tang, do you agree that there is a legitimate government role here to partner with the private sector to prove out and demonstrate new technologies?
Senator, absolutely. I think we go back to what you said about the plan. Unless we view the combination of STEM education, basic research, translational research, and commercialization as a continuum, and all part of an economic development plan overall, I think that we'll miss key components that continue to make us successful. So part of what you mentioned in public-private partnerships is that I think has to be part of the plan as well. There have to be incentives to perform and sustain programs that can help by combining the private sector, government, and nonprofits.
So, Dr. Tang, do you agree that supporting translational research and proof-of-concept activities increase competition in the market and help to overcome the types of corporate risk aversion that keep promising technologies bottled up?
Absolutely. I noted earlier, I think that is the key missing part of the plan right now. Is there are promising developments in the laboratories, in our great academic institutions that don't see the light of day because there is not that risk capital to provide proof of concept funding and further that development.
Yeah, I've heard from many of scientists in Massachusetts that they first got interested in when they were taken over to the Boston Museum of Science when they were kids, or over to the Boston Aquarium when they were kids, and they were kind of excited by the science that they saw there, and a kind of light bulb went off, and they said, let's think about that as a career. Can we help to increase the diversity of our future science and engineering workforce by having more education outside of the classroom, so that we're, encouraging and inspiring kids? Dr. Claway?
Absolutely. So informal science education, which is what goes on in museums and after-school clubs and all kinds of other things, is an important component. However, it's most effective when it's actually tied, when it's combined with formal science education as well. So it's a great thing when a teacher will actually take her class on a field trip to the Boston Science Center and then come back and actually teach material that ties into what they experienced there.
Yeah, and it's kind of part of the modern era that we're in, that you have members of the Senate and House just kind of mocking basic research. Like it's not special, Why should we tease that out and just make sure that we keep that on the front burner, Who cares if the National Institutes of Health get cut 7% a year for 9 years in a row, Will that impact on finding the cure for Alzheimer's or heart disease? Or no, the private sector will go and do it anyway, even if there's no commercial likelihood that they're going to get a reward for doing it, So why do we do this? We do it so that, we encourage the best and the brightest to go into these fields. You have to create a draw so that they come over here, because they can use the same 800s in their boards to write an algorithm for a hedge fund that doesn't contribute one iota to the overall productivity well-being of the planet. And they're equally drawn as they're going through their educational process over to this other early payoff financially a set of companies that will draw them away. So you need to have the basic research there for no other reason than you're going to draw the kids over there. But let me give one other practical example. Last year in the United States, we spent $131 billion on Alzheimer's patients. And the chairman and I, we both had personal experiences with this disease. $131 billion. The entire defense budget in our country is $600 billion. So Medicare and Medicaid paid $131 billion to some of the 5 million families that now have an Alzheimer's patient. Well, the baby boomers, when they're all retired, there's going to be 15 million baby boomers with Alzheimer's. So 131 times 3 is pretty much $400 billion, 2/3 of the defense budget of our country for one disease, unless we find the cure, unless we draw the smartest kids in science and mathematics and into these fields to find the cure. And you just can't say, well, we're going to cut the budget every year for 9 years in a row, because now you're dooming our country to making it impossible to ever balance the budget in the future, because you're not investing in those programs that are going to pay the big dividend for those families that dread that disease is going through their family, or Parkinson's, or heart disease, or diabetes, or you name it, And you have to believe we can do it, but you have to invest in the basic science, even though you don't know exactly where the payoff is. And that's why sequestration is the stupidest idea of all time, that it treats agriculture subsidies and finding the cure for Alzheimer's equally, that basic research is treated as though it's just another expendable, a commodity that the government really shouldn't be in, as though the private sector is going to do the basic research. They are not. We've learned this. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'll just end by saying this, that each year, for better or worse, we have Americans that win Nobel Prizes in science, and I get invited with my wife, to go to just the little reception, and I'm always in awe. And one year they asked one of the scientists, do you think we'll be able to compete against the Chinese and the Indians 30 years from now for Nobel Prizes? And the scientist said, we are here today, the 6 of us, because of an investment made 30 and 40 years ago in us. We do not yet know the wisdom of this generation. That generation had the wisdom to invest. And so that's what's in the balance here, this fight over how wise we are to make the investment in the kinds of science and technology that will continue to keep America cutting edge, but also make the changes that so profoundly affect Americans' families. We can't have a more important hearing than this, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for having it.
No, I mean, you've just spoken nothing but one piece of wisdom after another, which is typical of you. I want to add on precisely to that, because I'm not going to do something that I'm meant to be doing, because I don't know of anything which is more important than this hearing or the implications of this hearing, whether this hearing changes any mind, has any impact or not.